Humans have, by way of convention and invention, come up with a number of interesting platitudes that, on their face, seem very nice, pleasant, consoling. But oftentimes these platitudes exist in diametric opposition to the realities that they are intended to disguise. And there are a number of these, obviously. For example, just be yourself. Nobody in his right mind actually thinks that that is accurate, that you should just be yourself in the world, because if you were, you would end up with a lot of problems. Another one, of course, is it's what's on the inside that counts, which is to suggest that human beings are in fact not superficial. No, it's your personality that matters, and your character. I knew somebody in my life who would constantly talk about how it was 99% perspiration and only 1% inspiration, implying that, for example, it's mostly hard work. Almost all of it is hard work. Very little to do with talent in life. That talent effectively doesn't exist. Or to the extent it doesn't matter that much. Of course, ignoring the fact that your ability to be assiduous, to be diligent itself is largely born of genes. And so it goes with a lot of these. But the one I want to talk about today, probably my favorite one, is one you hear trotted out by many, many people, by many gurus of all sorts, flavors and stripes, by gym gurus, by people as illustrious as the Lord Jordan Peterson himself, who's at times been compared to Jesus Christ, I kid you not. And that one is, never compare yourself to others. Again, on the face of it, seems really nice. Why should you compare yourself to others? What's the point, right? Only compare yourself to yourself and to your former self, whatever that even means. The progress that you've made compared to the progress that you didn't make back in the day. On the face of it, it sounds perfectly reasonable. It certainly would be potentially helpful. It makes sense on some level. But what's the problem here with this maxim, with this dictate? The problem, fundamentally, is that human beings exist in a state of comparison. Everything that we've come to know and recognize as being a standard, an average, something that we can say is X, is based in largest measure upon our ability to observe multiple iterations of X and come to a conclusion that, in this case, this is the average. For example, how do we distinguish a sunny day from a rainy day? Now, I know that sounds trivial. Of course it does. Well, you go through a streak of sunny days. Then you have a couple of rainy days. You go outside. You can feel the difference, the wetness, maybe the moisture in the air. And over a significant period of time, you come to the conclusion that, oh, that's a sunny day. How do you know if somebody is tall or short? Well, of course, it is somewhat relative. An individual who is tall, say Indonesia, is going to be very short in a place like the Netherlands, particularly in a place like Friesland. Well, you come to the conclusion about shortness or tallness based upon comparison. You look at many people, maybe millions of people, if you make use of the internet, and then you think, that person is tall, that person is short. Now, could a person be tall or short if there were no comparison to be made? Almost certainly not. If you looked at one individual and never looked at anyone else, let's say there was some magical mechanism in place that prevented us from doing that. So you look at Bob. Bob is 5'10". You have that information in this case, but you don't know anything else. You can't say, is he tall? Is he short? Because you're being prevented by this magical mechanism from viewing other people. Now, it just so happens that depending on the country he's in, Bob could be potentially very tall or below average. Again, Bob would be below average in the Netherlands. But if he were in Peru, in South America, he would be significantly above the average. And how do we arrive at that conclusion? Through comparison. Now, that forms the basis of our understanding of where we stand in the world, how we can assess ourselves, whether it comes to looks, our abilities, our wealth, our lack of wealth, whatever it might be. Comparison is the basis of everything. Now, if you bring this up to people, some of these gurus are saying, never compare yourself to others. They'll say, well, that's not healthy. Okay, maybe it's not, but it doesn't detract from the ultimate truth of it. And certainly when it comes to other people, right? Think about it. If you were in the situation with an employer and you're looking for a raise and they're going through some sort of annual assessment, and you say, look, you shouldn't compare me to other employees. You should just give me the raise. You should never compare people to other people. Sounds a bit silly. Of course, it's okay if other people compare you to other people. But it's not okay if you compare yourself to other people to gauge where you are and where you stand in the world, whatever the thing might be. Like I said, looks, money, artistic talent, intellect. No, comparison, for better or worse, oftentimes for worse, runs the world. And the reason why many of these platitudes, this one included, of course, are trotted out is because it is helpful from a psychological standpoint, obviously, to not compare yourself to others. Because if you constantly compare yourself to others, people have ascertained this, it makes sense, you will become depressed and unhappy. Why? Because there are always people better than you, oftentimes vastly better than you. And that can be discouraging. So really, when people talk about this notion of not comparing yourself to others, what they're suggesting is that it would be psychologically damaging if you did so. But they're not willing, more often than not, to acknowledge that comparison forms the basis of our understanding of just about anything in terms of assessing it, whether it's good or bad. Let's say you want to buy a new GPU. You look at NVIDIA. You look at AMD. Do you have any idea, if you're not going to compare them, several of them, whether one is good or not? You might look up performance. The performance offered is always offered in comparison to the performance of other GPUs. And so it goes for everything. You can't hammer home this point enough, frankly speaking, because in this age of guruism, made cheap and easily available via the internet, you often won't hear that. Because it doesn't sound as cool to say, look, you have to compare yourself to others, and everyone else compares you to others, and every intuition you have about how good you are or how not good you are is based on comparison. Well, you shouldn't do that even though it forms the true basis of our understanding of assessment and gauging our abilities, etc. You shouldn't do that because it might be harmful to your psychology. It's a bit of a paradox. Deny the outward reality of things and internally pretend that it's not true. Now, the gurus are right about a few things. The gurus are right about the potential psychologically damaging effects of comparison. When I was much younger, I would compare myself all the time to others, particularly, and this is what we often do, in activities that meant something to me. So when I was younger, my father pushed me to pursue art. I would say I was somewhat above average, but not remarkable. And of course, given that I was being pushed in that direction, I would compare my artistic ability to others. And I found out very soon that despite a lot of practice, others would outstrip me in the blink of an eye without practicing very much. They just had much better, finer motor control. They could reproduce a vase with flowers in a still life far more readily and quickly and accurately than I could. And then I would hear, of course, the platitude, 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration, which was a well-intentioned but bald-faced lie, because I could see that John over there or Jill over there was putting in a fraction of the effort and outstripping me and exceeding me in every respect. So yeah, if you compare yourself to other people, you'll find out that you basically suck, because given sufficient time, given sufficient numbers, somebody out there is so good and dwarfs you so much in your respective activity or feature that you will suck at it. This applies to looks, this applies to work, this applies to everything. And so this is something that's very tricky to navigate, because I'm of the view that it doesn't make sense to just deny reality outright. It doesn't make sense to lie to ourselves and say, look, comparison isn't important. Everything is based on comparison. You might be an individual, if you're fortunate enough, that never has the inclination to compare. Maybe you enjoy drawing or doodling, and your drawing and doodling is, by standards of comparison, absolutely terrible, but you like the fact that in the course of 10 years, you graduated from drawing stick figures to adding a bit of three-dimensionality to them. Okay, fine. But that's a rare individual. Most people gauge themselves, need to assess themselves based on looking at the world around them, not just themselves. Because that's how everyone else judges you. Whether you get a raise or not, whether you get fired or not, that is based on performance related to other people. Whether you get a date or not, whether you get a relationship or not, that is based on comparison to other people based on their looks and their features. And so it goes for everything. So instead of pretending that that's not true, what these gurus ideally should do probably is to say, look, we use comparison for everything. It's an essential methodology, if you will, for understanding our place in the world. But if you get too bogged down in it, it can result in a kind of mental collapse. And so you have to do your best to navigate these treacherous waters. It's not enough to just say, it's not true. You don't need to compare yourself to others, because you have to eventually. But if you do it too much, it can destroy you internally. It can sow the seeds of constant frustration and discontent, which is not ideal. I know a lot of people see me as a black pill merchant, but really what I'm trying to do ultimately is to figure out a way to square reality as it is with a possibility. I offer it as a possibility of something that is in sync with reality, but also potentially helpful. I don't always achieve that, but pretending that things are not the case and outright denying the reality we inhabit, I don't think can be the way forward. Because eventually you will stumble upon the truth, and reality will hit you in the face, which is, funnily enough, one of the favorite maxims and sayings of our Lord and Savior Jordan Peterson. Well, bucko, reality will hit you in the face if you don't do this or that. All the while promulgating these platitudes without attaching the ultimate underlying truth to them, which is kind of strange. Or maybe it's not in the case of Jordan Peterson. So never compare yourself to others. It's simply unfeasible. Find a way to navigate any given underlying reality with the platitude that might be helpful from a psychological perspective, but is not reflective of that reality. That's probably the best way to do it. How you do that, how you achieve that, that's very difficult, because that's going to come down to your individual psychology. But I think that's a much more worthwhile pursuit than denying how we operate and function in the world. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. As always, please hit the like button, subscribe if you've not yet done so, share the video, hit the bell icon to be informed of my videos. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. May the gods watch over you. Take care. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.